Alright, welcome back guys. So now we have all of our codes set up, we've fixed our little errors, and now we have our deck list, we've got our player money, all of our initialization set up. We've got the start of the game, we've got placing the bets, we've got shuffling the cards, dealing the cards, assigning the values, assigning the card names, displaying what player has and what dealer has, checking for blackjacks. If blackjacks happen, then we can assign them here. And I've made a little note. We're going to go ahead and reprogram this a little bit better during our cleanup stage. I highly recommend once you've finished any sort of project that you go through and you look to clean up everything. But for now, we're going to keep going with the main functions of the program, and then we can go ahead and configure everything else as we need it. So let's go ahead and start with player turn, and let's give ourselves a little bit of a bar. That way we can tell that this is our next section. Just to mention, these comments that I input here with these bars, I just do that so that it's easy to tell when one main section is happening. You don't need these comment bars, it just makes it a little bit easier for me to organize them. So let's start with the player's turn. So we've checked for blackjack, player has cards, dealer has cards, so now it's time to decide whether or not the player would like to hit or stay. So we're going to use a while loop for that. So let's go ahead and create our variable that will handle the loop for our player turn. Player turn loop is equal to yes, while player turn loop is equal to yes. This will just help us to end our loop later. Print, and I'm going to go ahead and print the player's card string again, just to make it clear after we've talked about blackjack and stuff. Player has this, and then we're going to do hit choice. That's going to be a string assigned to the input of would you like to hit or stay. Great. So now let's do if hit choice dot capitalize. I love capitalize to make it clearer, make sure that capitalization doesn't impact the player's answer. If hit choice capitalize is equal to hit, then we will deal card to player card list. Where's player card list? Using active deck. And then we're going to do our player card value equals assign card values player card list. That will assign our card values, and then let's also assign our card names. Player card names is equal to assign card names player card list. Great, so now we got our new card. Whoops, let's make a space there. We have our new card, we've assigned the value to the hand, we've assigned the names to the hand. Let's print player hits and receives, R-E-C-E-I-V-E-S, A. And now here we're going to make this an f-string literal so that we can put in a variable. Player hits and receives A, and let's go ahead and get that string of the card that the player receives. Now how are we going to do this? Let's go straight into the player card names list, and let's get the very last element. We do that by doing a colon and a negative, we do just a -1. That will give the very last item in the card list. Great. Now we're going to check for busting. If player, because we only need to check for a bust each time that they hit. If player card value is greater than 21, print, let's make another F string, player busts with, and let's do player card value. That way it will tell you what number you were at when you bust, just to make sure there's no errors or any wonky business going on. And then we're going to make another comment, end of game. During our cleanup stage, once we create our master while loop, we'll change that end of game to what it should be. Great, so now we've talked about busting, we've talked about hitting, now let's talk about else, meaning, we can actually just do, let's do else, and that would be if the hit choice is not hit, then we're going to assign stay to it. So let's do print player stays. And then we don't need to type anything else because we've already told them what they have. We don't need too many redundant statements of what your cards are. Great. Let's do player turn loop is equal to no. That will mean that if they hit, then we'll go down this route. If they don't hit, it will go down this route, and then at the very end it will say player turn loop is no, and so it will not go back. It will go back and check while player turn loop is equal to yes, and it'll say no, player turn loop is equal to no, so we move on. We don't start over with the while loop. That's great. So now let's go ahead and do the dealer turn loop. Now this is going to be very similar to the player turn loop. The only difference is that instead of prompting the player as to whether they hit or stay, we're going to have to follow a set of rules. Now, general casino rules indicate that a dealer hits on 16 and stays on 17, meaning if a dealer has 16 or lower as their card value, they will always hit. If a dealer has 17 or higher as their card value, they will always stay. There can be variations in your rules depending on your local casino, but we're going to stick with those rules because they're very simple. So again, let's do dealer turn. Let's give just a couple of bars and then we'll keep going. Dealer turn loop. Again, we're going to create a variable to keep track of whether or not the dealer turn loop is active, and then a while loop. While dealer turn loop is equal to yes. And then here's where we're going to put in the logic for hitting or staying. If dealer card value is less than 17, hit choice is equal to hit, and elif, here we're going to do dealer card value between 17 and 22. That way, in case it gets really high up, then it will just pass on. It won't do anything particular for stay. We could just leave it as 17 or greater, but I like to just cover my bases here. Actually, let's just do this. 17 is less than or equal to dealer card value. Hit choice is equal to stay. Great. And that will cover less than 17 or 17 or greater, and then we don't have any more issues. Moving on. If hit choice, again, dot capitalize, we can copy this from here. It's the same exact line because it's the same exact logic. If hit choice capitalize is equal to hit, then we're going to deal card to dealer card list from active deck. Great. And then we need to do the same thing up here. We dealt the card, assign the player value, assign the player card name. So let's do the same thing for dealer card value. Dealer card value is equal to assign card values, dealer card list, and then dealer card names is equal to assign card names, dealer card list. Great, same as above. And now we're going to do print dealer hits and receives a, and then again we need to make this an F string literal. Put in our curly braces, dealer card names -1 to get the last card that was dealt to the dealer, and that will print out the dealer card that it got. And then again, if dealer card value is greater than 21, print F string literal dealer bus with dealer card value, same as with the player. And then we're going to do end of game. Great. And then we're going to go back here, else This will be if the hit choice is equal to stay. Print dealer stays. Great. Dealer turn loop is equal to no. Same thing, it will exit the dealer loop if they stay. If they bust though, we need this end of game handling, so so we'll handle that later. One last thing that I'd like to add in that's different about the dealer versus the player. The player's turn is broken up by prompting the player for certain actions. Each time that it asks, would you like to hit or stay, the program pauses and waits for input. With the dealer's turn, though, everything just automatically goes based on what the dealer card value is and what the value of dealer turn loop is. So if they hit 4 times, it's all going to be flying up the screen, and it's not as entertaining for the player. We want it to slow down a little bit so the player can see what's happening and have time to process before the dealer takes their next action. So what we're going to do is we're going to import another library, import time. Great. And then we're going to go here. Let's see. We're going to have it at the beginning of dealer turn loop. We're going to have it print out this line. Print at dealer has dealer card value, colon, and let's see, so we want it to print out each of the cards in the dealer's hand, and we're going to also want it to do that here. Notice that when we copied this down, it only did the first 2 lines. So how do we do that? We're going to delete that. So we have player has player card value, dealer has dealer card value. Notice that they're the same. And then we're going to do for each in player card names, print each. Now the for command is like a while command where it does something over and over again, but instead of being defined by a loop or a variable, the for command is defined by how many elements are in the current list. So what we're going to want to do is we have this list of player card names, so for each element in player card names, print out that element. And so it will repeat through this section of code as many times as there are cards to print out. And we're going to do the same thing here. For each in player card names, no, here we're talking about the dealer. So dealer card names, print each. Great. So this will be a way to show all of the cards that the player has, and this will show all the cards that the dealer has. Now, to give the player some time to read what the dealer has, we're going to do time.sleep 3. Now you're using the time library as a time object, call the method sleep for 3 seconds, and that will just pause for 3 seconds so that it can display the cards the dealer has and let the player read it. Then here's hit. So if they hit, we're going to want to give time.sleep after showing what the dealer has hit so that the player can read the card. And then again, if they bust, we're going to give time.sleep 3 to give them time to read the card. And then here we're going to do the same thing. Dealer stays, time.sleep 3. This will just give the player a little bit more time to read what the dealer is doing. Great. So now we've talked about the player turn hitting and staying and the dealer turn hitting and staying, and we've covered most of these bases. Now let's talk about how to end the game. So keep in mind that up here, let's see, we have at, we'll deal with that later. Let's see, if we have player blackjack, we need end of game. If we have dealer blackjack, end of game. And if we have double blackjack, we need end of game. Great, so we have these 3 assignments. And then here, if the player busts, end of game. If the player stays, we move on to the dealer's turn. Okay, sounds good. Now talking about the dealer's loop. If the dealer busts, end of game. Otherwise, it keeps on going. Dealer stays, and the dealer loop, and go on to the end of game. So now let's do end, let's call it final comparison. So this stuff will only happen if the player and the dealer both stay and no one has busted and no one has gotten blackjack. So now what we're going to do is we're going to compare the card values, and this is pretty straightforward. If player card value is greater than dealer card value, print F string literal player wins with player card value. Great. Elif player card value is less than dealer card value. We're going to print F string literal dealer wins with dealer card value. Same structure, just the first one is player winning because the player card value is higher. Second one is player losing, dealer winning because the player value is less. Great, and then the last option is else print F string literal player and dealer push with, and then we're just going to choose player card value. We could do dealer card value here instead if we wanted. It's going to be the same value because if player's card value isn't higher and dealer card value isn't higher, that means they have the same value, which means player and dealer are pushing with either player or dealer's card value. Now what we want to do is we want to handle the bets. Let's see. So then if the player wins, what we want to do is the player, remember at the beginning, we take the user bet out of the player money, so it's sitting on the table. If the player wins, they get that bet back, plus the dealer will pay out an equal amount of what they bet. So that means that in effect, at this point in time, we are going to pay 2 times the user bet to the player. So we do player money plus equals 2 times user bet. Great. If the dealer wins, we've already taken the user bet out of player money. So if the dealer wins, the dealer takes the user bet, but doesn't take any extra money from the player. You only lose what you bet. And so in this stage, we don't need to take away any more money. The player has already lost that money, and so we don't need to keep track of that. And then finally, if the player and the dealer push, the player gets back the money that they bet, but they don't get any more money from the dealer. So we just want to do player money plus equals user bet. That will give them back the money that they bet, but no more money. Great. Finally, we want to mark that this is going to be an end of game. This is an end of game. And this is an end of game. Awesome. Finally, at this point, we've talked about blackjacks, we've talked about player busting, we've talked about dealer busting, we've talked about comparing the cards at the end. All of our possible outcomes for a blackjack game have been addressed. So now the only thing left is to talk about prompting the user to see if they want to play again. Because remember, we don't want them to have to run this script every single time that they want to play again. So we're going to do a new variable, continue choice is equal to input, would you like to play again? If continue choice is equal to, nope, if continue choice capitalized, remember I like capitalized, is equal to no. And here we need to do figuring out a way to completely end the game. So we're going to do exit game for now. Remember, end of game means that all of these actions that we take during the actual play, which starts at shuffling the deck, and actually starts at placing bets, right? All of that end of game means all of these actions are done, but they might want to play again. So if they want to play again, then we allow them to play again. But if they say no, don't forget your colon, if they say no, we want to completely exit the game. So that's why I have a different comment here for end of game and exit game. Great. Lastly, we've talked about keeping track of player money. let's go back to how we talked about money in the beginning. Remember here we have a file that we've created, money.txt, and if it exists, then we're going to read from it. If it doesn't exist, we create it and we put $500 into it. So we want to make sure that at the end of each game, before starting a new game or anything, we're going to have the player save their money. So let's go ahead and do f equals open money.txt as a writable file. Player money string. Remember, this is the variable that we used for saving and loading our player money string from a text file, is equal to string player money. Great. Then f.write player money string. This will write to that file that we loaded, and then f.close. And that way it will close the file. So this little 4 lines of code will take whatever player money is at the end of the game, and it will take that player money and it will write it to the file. Great. Here we have, would you like to play again? We've talked about this. So now what we need to do is do a little bit of cleanup and set up our while loops. Everything that we've been coding so far, you'll notice the indentation is at the very beginning. But when we're dealing with a whole game loop, we're going to need to adjust the indentation. So let's take a look. Let's see, we have importing files, we have building the deck. All of this stuff up here happens once. You only create the deck once, and you only load or create the player money file once. But things like placing bets, active deck, all of this stuff will happen multiple times. So here we're going to take all of these things, all of these actions right here, and we're going to take it all the way down to here. Everything that happens as part of the game, nope. Let's go again and let's start it here. Let's take everything that happens as part of the game while the game is active and let's indent it. Why do we indent it? Well, let's go up here, and at the beginning we're going to do game, let's see, round loop is equal to yes, while round loop is equal to yes, and then here we have all of this stuff. Let's take our comment line out of there, make it a little bit clearer. So here is where the start of the game happens. So everything that's indented, that we just indented, will be included in round loop. We can minimize this, so now we can show all of those lines of codes that we indented are now part of this round loop. Now the round loop is what we were referring to when we talked about end of game. So anywhere where we have end of game, we're going to replace that with round loop is equal to no. And we're going to Great. Let's make sure that we're spelling it right. While round loop is yes. Great. Okay. So let's just scroll through here real briefly and let's look for all of our end of games. You could do find and replace, but this is a little bit more interactive and we can talk about it. So if someone hits blackjack, round loop's going to be no. And if player bust, round loop is going to be no. If dealer busts, round loop is going to be no. And then at the end of when we do our comparisons of money, round loop is going to be no. Great. Now what we want to do is we want to make sure that these individual, let's see, if we start at blackjacks, after we do this check, if round loop is no, then we need it to just not do anything else in this code. For example, moving on to player turn. We don't want it to go into player turn because blackjack has already happened. We need to skip that. So what we do is while player turn loop is yes and round loop is equal to no. Great, we're going to copy that. That's going to be helpful. So we skip player turn loop if round loop is equal to no. So we've already dealt with that. While dealer turn loop is yes and round loop is no. We skip dealer turn if round loop is no. Great, we've already dealt with that. And then this is going to say, let's do another loop. While round loop is equal to yes, because card comparison will only happen if round loop is equal to yes. Make a colon there. Great. Oh, it's PyCharm is getting mad at me because I'm using the equality test. It should be round loop is equal to no. So let's go make sure that we didn't make that mistake. Yep, we made that mistake up here too. And here, that needs to be fixed, and that needs to be fixed. I'm sure you guys were shouting at your screen trying to tell me that round loop should just be set equal to no. We're not trying to do an equality test. Great, so that helped resolve a lot of that. So now we have created our round loop with all of the actions that we need to take during the round loop. That's awesome. What else do we need to do? Well, now we need to do a game loop, because let's go down to here. After round loop is all done, it will then write the money and then continue choice, if continue choice capitalized is equal to no, and then exit game. So exit game means that we need another loop that we want to use to handle whether we're still playing or whether we want to exit. So again, we bring all this stuff, we select everything that happens while the game is active, tab this out, great. Game loop is equal to yes, while game loop is equal to yes. And now all of this stuff will only happen while game loop is equal to yes. So if we want to exit the game, all we got to do is do game loop is equal to no. Whoops, it's still a comment. There we go. Once it sets game loop is equal to no, then it will stop doing all of these things. So we look at game loop is, while game loop is equal to yes, we minimize this. Once game loop is equal to no, it stops doing all of this stuff and it moves on to what's next. So what's next? We just want to do print thanks for playing in the trial and error casino. Come back again soon. Great. So this helps to cover whoops, that doesn't need to be a colon. Great. Okay, so this will cover all of our loops that we need. Finally, there's one more thing that we want to do. Let's see. There's a couple more things that we want to do, actually. Let's see. Right here at the very beginning, when the game loop right before the game loop happens, we can do print welcome to the trial and error casino. That will just tell them, hey, you know, once everything's loaded up, it will give them a little welcome sign. Great. We create our loops. We cleaned up our initial variables. We cleaned up our end of game statements. Let's do something real quick else that we wanted to cover that I didn't cover last time. Here, I made a note here about we wanted to clean this up. Instead of just printing blackjack check, what we want to do is if blackjack check is equal to player blackjack, print f string literal player blackjack with, and then let's do player card name 0 and player card names 1. Remember that There we go. Player blackjacks with player card name 0 and player card names 1. Remember, when we hit a blackjack, it's only going to be 2 cards. Blackjack is always 2 cards, so we only need this statement. Next, we did that. Whoops. Looks like I made another mistake, just briefly glancing down here. While player turn loop is yes and round loop is equal to no. No, this should be yes. It only should happen while round loop is equal to yes. That's another mistake. And this is why I like these live coding demonstrations, is because it kind of helps to show the process of, always reviewing your code, making sure that the things that you are writing make sense the first time, just so that anything that you do makes sense. Great. So round loop is yes. Great. Round loop is yes. Round loop is yes. Okay, so that will make sure that our round loop will always be checked correctly. Now here we want to do our string print deal. Oh, wait, let's make it an F string literal. Make it easier on ourselves. Dealer blackjacks with dealer card names 0 and dealer card names 1. Great. Let's do a little long string here. Double blackjack. And then print this one can go down here, and this one can go down here as well. That way it will tell you what both players had. Great. This string's too long now. Just going to clean up our comments. Notice when you notice one error, it's helpful to just go through and check for any other errors of the same type. Great. Awesome. Last but not least, there's a couple of coding conventions that I recommend that you follow. Actually, we can leave this the way that it was, because we're going to just put this back here. And there we go. Great. There's a couple of other coding conventions that you can follow. For example, defining these functions. Function definitions, generally speaking, it's helpful to put them at the beginning of your code before everything else. That way your functions will always be read into memory before your code is. And that can be important to do, because if you have a function that's called before it's defined, your program will get confused and it won't know how to define the function. So we're going to minimize that, make sure there's 2 lines of space after every function definition. Let's see if we can find any other function definitions. Here's one, assign card names. So as you can see, I'm just selecting the function definition, and there we go. And then I'm just highlighting it, Control X to cut, and then Control V to paste it. Now we can squeeze that up a little bit more, make it a little bit clearer to read. Here's our check for blackjack script, and let's put our check for blackjack script up here. Did I give enough room? Yes. 2 lines of blank space after every function definition is the best way of doing things. That doesn't need 2 lines before it. Let's see if we have any more function definitions here. Nope, I'm not seeing any. Great. So now it should just be our code. And now every single piece of code, always a blank line at the end, every single piece of code that you run, if it's supposed to run while you're running the script directly, there's one more convention that we do, and that's make a tab right here. If underscore underscore name is equal to, and then a string by the name of main. The reason why we do this is that this, whoops, 2 blank lines after function definition. You'll see this little play button up here. So this statement checks to see whether this Python script that you're running is named main with the underscores. These are dunder methods, double underscore methods. And the reason why we use these is If you are importing a script from Python into another script, then you don't want, let's say you want to use this function or these functions in another script. Let's say I'm writing a poker script. I might want to use assign card values and assign card names and deal card. I might want to use these in my other script, so I can just import this file into that one. But when I import that, I don't want it to run the blackjack game. I just want to import the functions that are there. So this is important for if you're using your scripts and reusing your functions for other means. Generally speaking, you don't need to worry about it, and without this and without the indent that I added, it will still work fine, but this is just a proper convention that you should follow if you're making Python scripts. Just kind of looking through here to see if there's anything else that we want to do. But overall, I think that this is a great place to end it. And I will follow up if there's any other corrections. But otherwise, stay tuned for just a quick, brief conclusion about our project and suggestions for further work for yourself. Thanks for watching.